Hey everybody, thanks for joining. Dave here. We're going to go over 10 GED practice problems today. We're going to have a nice little variety. There's going to be some surface area problem, slope, volume of a cone, some things like that. So let's just get into it. So a painter rented a wallpaper steamer at 9 a.m. and returned it at 4 p.m. He paid a total of $28.84. What was the rental cost per hour? So for this one, I like to think of it as when I used to work at a restaurant and I didn't have really an hourly rate, and I would make, let's say, $100 in 10 hours. I would always divide that total amount that I made by the number of hours that I worked, and that would give me my average rate per hour, for that shift. So this is the same idea as that, except for this one, we're figuring out how much a painter rented a wallpaper steamer for per hour. So let's just go ahead and write down our variables. So the first one we have is time, T, from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., which is 7 hours. So we rented this thing for 7 hours. And total cost, $28.84. So cost is going to be $28.84. And these are the only two variables that were given. So all we have to do here is just like the restaurant example. We just divide $28.84 by 7 hours. And that gives us our cost per hour. And we bring out our calculator because, well, I can't do this in my head. So $28.84, which I actually already have up on the calculator here, divided by 7 equals $4.12. So it's not so bad. Seems like a reasonable amount to be paying for a steam cleaner or a wallpaper steamer or whatever that is. So our answer is C for the first one, $4.12. Okay, number 2. What is the value of 36x minus 8y squared when x equals 3 and y equals negative 6? So for this one, we're just going to plop 3 into x and negative 6 into y. And I like to use parentheses just because it helps make things a little bit more clear. So 36, and we'll put this 3 right here into x, minus 8 times negative 6 squared. And that can be rewritten as, well, let's just go ahead and take care of this exponent first. Negative 6 times negative 6 is positive 36. And then we can just put this right into our calculator. That's probably the quickest and easiest thing to do. So you'll just do 36, and any number right next to another number inside parentheses, the calculator will just look at that as multiplication. So you can just put it into the calculator just as I've written it. And most of the time in math courses, this is the notation that most people end up using. It's just a little bit faster. Okay, so it's as simple as that, and our answer is negative 180. So the answer is B. And just remember, when you are simplifying equations like this, just keep in mind that the first thing to do, you want to deal with exponents and square roots, or aka radicals. The second thing to deal with is multiplication and division. And lastly, addition and subtraction. And if you do it in different orders, it could potentially mess you up. So just remember this for any future time that you have to simplify any expressions. That's it for this one. All right, number 3. Let's just go ahead and read the problem, and then we will relate keywords to inequalities. Because, when you see keywords like at most, or does not exceed, or, well, in this case, a budget of, that means less than or equal to. But let's just read the problem and it'll make more sense. So Annie is planning a business meeting for a company. She has a budget of $1,325. So when I hear that, I think Annie can spend less than or equal to $1,325, right? Because she can't spend any more than that, because you can't spend money you don't have, right? So that's just, so let's just keep going. So she has a budget of $1,325 for renting a meeting room at a local hotel and providing lunch. She expects 26 people to attend the meeting, and the cost of renting the meeting room is $270. Which inequality shows how to find the amount X Annie can spend on lunch for each person? Okay, so we need to figure out what kind of equation we can put here for what Annie can spend. So we know, well, right off the bat, we see this less than or equal to 1325. So we know it has to be B or D, just right away. And she expects 26 people to attend the meeting, and X represents what Annie can spend on lunch for each person. So just by reading that, you know it has to be 26X. And then you're just adding 270 on this side, because it doesn't matter if 0 people show up or 26 people or 30 people show up. She has to pay that 270 regardless. So 270 is just kind of there by itself, but has to be on this side of the equation. And that must be less than or equal to 1325. Or you could say 26X is less than or equal to 1325 minus 270. But it looks to me like B is the answer because that was the first form. So let's not get too ahead of ourselves. But number 4, Dominic earns $285 per week plus an 8% commission rate on all of his sales. If Dominic sells $4,213 worth of merchandise in a week, how much will his total earnings be for the week? All right, so for this one, keywords. Well, first of all, we know that Dominic earns $285 per week, regardless if he sells nothing or if he has a record-breaking week and sells thousands upon thousands. It doesn't matter. He's always making that $285. So Dominic earns $285 per week plus. Well, right off the bat, we can just go ahead and say $285 plus. Just pay attention. Sometimes the answers are just right here for you, and it's sometimes you have to think about it, and sometimes you don't, as you can see. So $285 plus. Now we have an 8% commission rate on all sales, and he sells $42.13 for that week. So what is the total earnings he's going to make? Well, he's going to make 8% on $42.13 plus this $285. So you know that if we want to find 8% of $42.13, we multiply it by 0.08. If we wanted to find 80% of $42.13, we multiply it by 0.8. So you get the idea. So now it's just as simple as plugging this into the calculator and we're good to go. So we'll go ahead and do that. So 285 plus 42.13 times 0.08, and the calculator will do the multiplication first and then the addition automatically, so we don't have to use parentheses or anything like that. And it looks like he is making $622.04, which is going to be D. And that's it. Okay, number 5. For this one, we have this fairly large, a bunch of information about trees. And what I've seen for this GED exam as I go through multiple practice tests, I'm seeing that a lot of the times they'll have, well, not a lot of the time, but you'll see sprinkled throughout the test that they'll have like some large data set with a bunch of information like they do on number 5 here. And then they'll have like 2, 3, maybe even 4 questions that are asking you different things, or they're asking you to extract different information from the same data set. So, the good thing is we only have to read all this stuff, once, and that's going to carry us through, at least 2 or 3 questions. So let's just get into it. A scientist is studying, and I'm right here, a scientist is studying red maple tree growth in a state park. She measured the trunk diameters of a sample of trees in the same month every other year. So, year 1, year 3, year 5, year 7 for 2 trees. 1, 3, 5, 7. You get the idea. So the table shows the data for 2 of the trees. This is the final year in which she will collect data. When her data collection is complete, she will predict future red maple tree growth. Okay, so on the right here is the actual question. Okay, so the scientist plots the data for tree 2, and remember, they're going to give you a bunch of data over here, and they're only going to ask you're only going to use a little bit of it. So when she says tree 2, we want to make sure we're looking at tree 2. So tree 2 on a coordinate grid, we're going to try to plot the data. She begins by plotting data for year 3 and year 11. So year 3 and year 11. And what are the locations of the 2 points on the coordinated grid? So this is just a real long way of saying plot the points 3:12 and 11:14.4 on this grid. And this is our x-axis down here, so we got our y-axis, which is, the diameter in inches of the trees. And our x-axis down here is the year, which for some reason is not labeled. Sorry about that. But the x-axis is the year. So first we're going to plot 3 and 12. So x-axis, 1, 2, 3, right here. And 12, which is right here. Because I'll go cross-eyed unless I actually draw the lines up to this point. There's 1 point. And then we got to go down to this one, 11 and 14.4. So that's 11 and 14. Well, 14.4 is going to be kind of like up here. So we'll kind of go straight across, as straight as I can go, all the way to 11. And, roughly that's going to be where that point is. So all it's saying to do is to plot these 2 points, but man, do they give us a lot of information. So that's it for this one. Let's go to number 6. All right, number 6. So we have the same data set as number 5. So I'm not going to reread everything, but basically a scientist is measuring, every other year a scientist is measuring the 2 trees' trunk diameters. So as the years go on, the trunk diameters get the tree's getting bigger. That's really all it's saying. Okay, and I'm real sorry about all this information. I've got the data set over here. I've got some reference equations that we're going to be using to solve this problem up here, and our actual question over here. So this is our question. So let's get into that. So the scientist creates an equation that models her data for each tree so that she can predict the diameter in the future. Complete a linear equation that fits the data for tree 1. So remember, we're only working with tree 1 on this problem. So complete a linear equation that fits the data for tree 1, where x is the year and y is the trunk diameter in inches. Okay, and we should be able to choose from right here. That should be our answer, and as you can see, our answer needs to be in the form y equals, that looks like mx plus b. So our final answer will be in that form, but we will have to use the slope of a line formula and point slope form of the equation of a line. We'll have to use both of those to find our answer. So there's going to be 2 steps to this. So step 1, we're going to find the slope. So m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And since we're only dealing with tree 1, we're just going to go ahead and say y2 is going to be 19.2, y1 is going to be 18.6. So if y2 is 19.2, then x2 has to be 3. So x2 will be 3, x1 will be 1 over 3 minus 1. And that's going to be equal to, 19.2 minus 18.6 is just 0.6. 3 minus 1 is 2, so that's just going to be 2. okay? And that, so then slope is going to be equal to 0.6 over 2 is just 0.3. So now we know m is 0.3. Okay, now what? So now that we have this, so we have m, now we're just going to, and let me just clean this up a little bit. Now we are going to use this m, plug it into here, and then we have a y1 and an x1, which will be, well, x1 was 1, y1 was 18.6, so, we're just using these two. So we got x1 is 1, and y1, sorry, a little sloppy, is 18.6. Okay, so using that formula, we will say y minus y1, or y minus 18.6, equals m, which is 0.3, x minus x1. And x1 is 1. Oh, 1 second. Okay. Now let's bring this down a little bit. Let's simplify this. So we are going to add 18.6 to both sides. So this is going to leave us with y equals 0.3x minus, and we're just going to do one step at a time. Okay, let's go ahead and do another step. So now we will distribute this 0.3 to both of these into the parentheses. So that will be y equals 0.3x minus 0.3 times 1 is just 0.3 plus 18.6. Okay, so let's add these two guys together. So then we're almost there. It's going to be 0.3x, and 18.6 plus a negative 0.3 is just going to be 18.3. So this equation right here will predict future trunk diameters given by y when you plug in. So we could plug in, so we would plug in for x. This is what the question's saying is, we could plug in for x. If the tree continues to grow at the rate that it is, we could put in like year, 19 or 20 or 30, and this should be an accurate representation of what the trunk diameter would be in inches. So that's what the question's saying, but let's just go back up here and see. So y equals 0.3x plus 18.3. And let's see, we've got a 0.3, we've got an x, and an 18.3. So I'll just try to draw this, 0.3x plus 18.3, and that's that. So I know this one was kind of long. Just remember, first we get m using the slope formula, and then we plug m into this equation here and extract x1 and y1 and solve. And I know that one was kind of long and sloppy, but I think that's one of the harder ones, so we got through it. Let's move on to number 7. Let's go ahead and get into it. In year 13, the scientists will put tree wrap around tree 1 to protect it from the winter snow. The height of the tree wrap needs to be 45 inches, and they've drawn us a nice picture here of what it's supposed to look like. So the wrap is priced by the square foot. To the nearest square foot, how many square feet of the wrap does she need? So how many square feet do we need to purchase to wrap this tree, and then we need to round to the nearest square foot. Now, as you can see, we're in year 13, and we're on tree 1, as it says in the problem. So tree 1, year 13, and we're given diameter in inches. So we know we're going to have to convert that to feet. So let's get into it. We know that for the cylinder, we have two terms, 2 pi RH and 2 pi r squared. That basically is a surface area to completely enclose a cylinder. Now, 2 pi RH takes care of this part of the cylinder, or just the part that goes around, and this 2 pi r squared takes care of these two circles on the top and bottom. Why is that? Well, if you can recall, which is also on the reference sheet, the surface area of a circle is pi r squared. So this 2 pi r squared takes care of both circles, the one on top and the one on bottom. So we have to just keep that in mind for this one. So actually the surface area that we're interested in is only going to be 2 pi RH, or this guy right here. Okay, so let's take this a step further and say that because the radius is what we need, and we're given diameter, diameter equals 22.2 inches, and r, or radius, is diameter divided by 2, we know if we divide this by 2, we get 11.1 inches. So that's equal to the radius. Okay? So we can basically just say 2 pi times 11.1, and the height is also in inches, so we just go ahead and say 45, and that is equal to, let's bring out our calculator. So 2 times pi, which we'll just put in 3.14, times 11.1 times 45. That's going to give us 3136.86 inches. Okay, so that's basically this picture right here without the top and bottom. That's basically the amount of square inches we're going to need to take care of wrapping 45 inches in height of a tree that's 22 inches in diameter, or 11.1 inches radius. So we're done most of the problem. We still need to convert this to feet. So how do we do that? Well, let's look at it like this. And it stumped me the first time, I'm not going to lie. So let me show you how I ended up figuring this one out. So this 3136 right here, let's just go ahead and 3136.86. So that's the area of what we're looking for, but this is in inches. And remember, if we have, let's say we have a 1 foot by 1 foot, that is 1 square foot, okay? Or 1 feet squared, 1 foot squared. But if we convert that into inches, that's 12 inches by 12 inches, and that's actually 144 inches. So the very last step here to convert to feet is to, well, let's actually do it down here. 3136.86 inches divided by, and I originally divided this by 12. That actually messed me up, but you actually have to divide this by 44 because we're looking at the area. So if we type that into our calculator, that should give us the answer. So 31 36.86. Oops. Divided by 144. We'll convert this inches into feet. And now we have so that's going to be 21.78 feet. And if we round that up, that will go to 22 feet. And let's see if that's one of our answers. And yes, that is our answer right here, 22 feet. So there's a lot of steps to this one, so just make sure you're going through it and understanding each one. But that's it for that one, and the hardest part is over. We're on the home stretch, so stick with me. All right, number 8. An office uses paper drinking cups in the shape of a cone with dimensions as shown. To the nearest tenth of a cubic inch, what is the volume of each drinking cup? So the first thing we're going to do is go over to our math reference sheet, and I've already marked it. We have V for a cone, or volume of a cone, is 1/3 pi r squared h. Okay. So that's the formula we're going to use, and we see that we have a diameter here of 2 3/4 inches. So I like to just go ahead and 2 3/4 inches. If we want to change that into if we want to change the mixed number into a fraction, it's going to make it a little easier to work with. Let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to multiply 2 by 4 and then add that to 3. So this is always going to look like, we basically just take whatever's on the denominator of the fraction portion of the mixed number, and we pop it over here. And what's on the numerator is going to basically be, we take the integer here, 2, multiply it by 4, which is 8, and then add 3, which is 11. So we're multiplying down this way, taking that number, and then just adding it to 3. So just understand that you might have to do that in the future for questions that don't let you use a calculator. Or you could just say that this is equal to, if you know that 3/4 is 0.75, you could just say that this is 2.75. It's all the same. Okay, so moving on, we know that this is the diameter of the circle here. It's basically the entire diameter of the circle. So let's go ahead and divide by 2. So if we take, because we remember D equals 2R, or R times 2, therefore R would have to be equal to diameter divided by 2. So we're going to take 11/4, divide by 2, which is the same thing as, 2 is equal to 2/1. I do that because whenever I'm doing this, instead of doing it in my head, I'll just say, instead of doing 11/4 divided by 2/1, I'll do 11/4 times 1/2. Basically, we are flipping this fraction. So that is also equal to 11/4 times 1/2, which is equal to 11, because we're multiplying 11 times 1, and then 4 times 2, 11/8. So that equals R. So now it's just as simple as plugging everything into this formula here. So V equals 1/3 pi times radius squared, or 11/8 squared, times height, which is 4 inches. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and put that into the calculator real quick. And that is going to look like, so for 1/3, I'll just put, well, let's keep it consistent. So we'll just do 1/3 times pi, or you can just say 3.14, times, now this has to be in parentheses, so 11/8 quantity squared times 4. So since this is in the parentheses, the calculator will automatically do this 11/8, and then it should square it, then it'll do the multiplications. So if we hit enter, we get 7.9. And is that one of our answers? It sure is. So the answer is B. And that is it for this one. So these can be kind of confusing, but you just want to remember to look for the key words. So let's read it. There are S steps from the pedestal to the head of the Statue of Liberty. So we'll just go ahead and say S equals the number of steps. And that's the Statue of Liberty, or we'll just go ahead and say SOL. The number of steps in the Washington Monument is, or is equal to, 27 less than 6 times the number of steps in the Statue of Liberty. So another way to look at this is 6 times the number of steps in the Statue of Liberty. Now remember, S is number of steps in Statue of Liberty, so this is just going to be 6 times S. 27 less than. So it's just minus 27, okay? So what this is saying is the number of steps in the Washington Monument is equal to 6 times the number of steps in the Statue of Liberty minus 27. So these do get a little confusing sometimes. Just remember to look for the keywords. Times, less than. Well, we don't really need to know the is for equals because they don't actually put that variable in the equation, but you get the idea. You just want to do a few of these to start to get used to them. That's it for that. Thanks for joining me in this video series, and I'll continue to make more.